What's going on, everybody? This is Christians in Politics, series part two. If you watched the first one, we are talking about Christians in politics, right? We've always heard the term there should be a separation between church and state. And I think we've reached a time in this nation where um, there's no longer a separation between the government and the church. And we always think church, we think Christians, right? But on a nation that was founded on freedom of religion, I believe that when that word church, it really means religion. And right now, I believe it is August 5th, the time of this upload. We're watching our nation being taken over by a certain religion, which I believe isn't just a religion. It is a military government ideology, right? I've been studying Islam for a little while now. And right now we live in a time where it's a very sensitive topic to be speaking about somebody else's religion. But we have to look at the facts, right? The facts speak for itself. It's not assumption. It's not taken out of context. We just got to look at it for what it is. And like they say, the proof is in the pudding, right? We're living a time right now in America where Islam is taking over now the Western part of the world. They have taken over a good majority of the Eastern part, the Middle Eastern part. And now it's transitioned over into the West. If you watch the news, you see what happened in Morocco, in Spain, and all of that happened. You had thousands of military-aged Muslim male enter into the country illegally, and crimes, and if I'm not mistaken, a couple of people have died since that has happened. And now, years ago, under President Joe Biden's rule or reign or whatever you want to call it, many, by the millions of illegal immigrants came in through the border. And I know some people may say, us Christians, we should stay out of it. But reality is, if you look at scripture, even in the time of Moses and Joshua, God was not against foreigners entering into his nation or amongst his people or into the country. What he was against is when they would come into the nation and bring their gods and bring their culture and traditions that did not match with what God had already established. God had already established 10 commandments. He had already established his law, his rule, his worship. And he did not want foreigners, because he knew what was going to happen with God's people was they would fall into idolatry and end up following a foreign god, right? It would end up believing in this thing. And even Daniel prophesies that in the last days, this Antichrist is going to come and bring in a foreign god. Guys, we see this right now, right? In the United States of America, a foreign god is being brought, because when we say foreign, means it's not really from here, right? It is a Middle Eastern god. Allah is a Middle Eastern god, deity, and it is being brought over into the United States. And somebody say, well, Jamie, isn't this the country or the nation that the Constitution, the amendments, everything is based off freedom of religion? Yes, you are free to worship whatever you want. And the God of Christianity allows you to worship whatever you want, right? And I believe in that, and I agree with that, and I believe in that in the Bible and in our nation, in our Constitution, and in our amendments, and your rights, and all these different things. Yes, you should have the ability, if you wanted to worship Allah, you are able to. Nonetheless, I believe that nobody's freedom should come and tamper with our other amendments and our other freedoms, right? So you are free to worship Allah, but you're not free to worship Allah and make everyone else worship Allah or become Muslim by force. So this religion is not just a religion. It is a political government military strategy where you come, you bring this God, because that's exactly what Muhammad did when he was in Mecca and you know, he moved around and into Medina. Uh, he didn't just come to bring a God, he came to take over with his God, right? And America, this nation, was founded on Christian beliefs. And our constitution, our laws, all of that has been based off biblical beliefs. And, you know, obviously through time, a lot of those things are changing. America's becoming more, you know, secular, not so Christian. But now you have this radical, extreme, you know, and I'm being careful with the words that I use. I believe the Democrat Party that used to exist has been gone for a long time. Like the Democrat Party that, you know, John F. Kennedy and those guys, that has died a while back. And you are entering into socialist communism, right? And I believe the liberal left is riding that wave, and that's there. Now you have the Republican Party that is kind of using Christianity, I think, to try to spearhead elections and stuff like that. And, you know, and a lot of them really are not, I don't think, up to par with scripture. And so why am I doing these series? Because I believe we're in a time where Christians need to raise up and get into politics. Christians need to rise up and do something. Today, actually, Abdul El-Sayed wins the Michigan primary for the Democratic Senate primary. So, obviously, he's gonna go, you know, head to head with the Republican nominee in November. But right now, we continue to see this uprising of Muslim politicians, some that have not even been in the nation that long. We already saw that with Ilhan Omar, and many other, you know, politicians. You see, Mamdani, who's a mayor, but is acting like a governor / president of the United States. He's definitely not acting like a mayor. You know, you should be focusing on, you know, transportation, getting the trash taken out, you know, stuff like that. But he's over there, you know, getting in foreign affairs, getting involved in foreign policy, meeting, you know, about to meet with Iranian regime leaders. I mean, it's nuts. But, you know, now you can't say these things because it's all of a sudden you're I don't know, racist or whatever. But guys, we got to see what's going on, and there's got to be a rise, right? Christian pastors, you know, you're called by God. You're good, you know, God has put that in you to speak in this. You have a passion for these things. Guys, we got to rise. We gotta rise. If these people are entering, and whether it's people voting for them or it's rigged, we have God on our side. And the Bible says, if God is for us, who can be against us? And listen, yes, our nation, you know, is, wow, it's a beautiful nation that somebody can get the opportunity to run and be Muslim. And I'm not opposed to that. I'm opposed to the ideology and the takeover. That's what I'm opposed to. If you wanted to be a Muslim man or woman that wants to go in the Senate or Congress, fine. But assimilate to what has already been established here for 250 years. And you see that what God had told it to Moses and to Joshua. If the foreigners come live among you, it says treat them well. You know, you see it says like don't mistreat them. Treat them as if they were your own. But they said that they would need to assimilate. Like teach them the ways, teach them the customs, teach them the culture, and don't let them bring their God. We're allowing them to bring their God, and their God is not just demanding worship. Their God demands blood. Their God demands death of infidels, Jews, Christians. Their God demands government, political, military, complete takeover. And if people say that it's not what it is, then the infidels are supposed to pay jizya, which is a tax. If not, you're put to death. So how are you going to impose taxes, right, on Christians or Jews or non-Muslims? How are you going to impose that unless you're in a government position to be imposing taxes on people? So that shows that they have to get into government positions. So we got to stop that. We can't allow that to happen. And I think in Vero Beach, Florida, a bunch of people came and stormed. I think it was a city council meeting because a bunch of them, they were talking about turning into what they're calling an epic city, right? A whole Muslim community in Vero Beach. So you see this and you see it all over, and all you just got to do is dig a little bit into history, and you see that that's exactly what happened in Iran and Lebanon. A lot of these places, listen, a lot of these places, even Egypt, a lot of these places were not Muslim. They were Christians, and they brought their evangelism. They brought their proselytizing. They brought that into there through the sword. See, we as Christians, we convert people through the cross of Christ, right? And through his death and through his suffering and through his persecution, we enter into salvation. But them through the sword are bringing people in. And this is why I said why we would have to stop this. So you see Abdul El-Sayed wins the Michigan Democratic Senate primary. And if you just continue to follow everywhere, I believe in the state of Texas right now, same thing in the Senate, it's being taken over as well. And come on, Texas has always been a big red state, very pro, 2A, very pro-Christian. And that's changing. Why? Because the demographic in Texas has changed tremendously since the border was open and it was infiltrated. A lot of these towns are turning into epic cities, which is Muslim cities. They're just calling it epic, but it's not like Epic Universe. They're turning them into these Muslim compound, and don't be surprised if they're even their own kind of military base, their own headquarters on our soil. Think about it. You have, these Muslims coming and creating their own headquarters on U.S. soil. And right now you have Christians who are so divided. You have Christians who don't unite. You don't have Christians who pray. If we don't band together and do something about this, maybe in 10, 15, 20 years, maybe even less than any of that, we may enter into a socialist, communist, Islamic rule here in Western America. A couple of pastors that I follow, Pastor David Lynn out of Canada, he was warning where he was from in Canada that his nation would become that, and it has. In Canada, you are not allowed to vote. Quote certain scriptures, and you might get criminalized for that. And he just made a post today on Facebook, and I seen it. He said that he had gotten a dream from the Lord, and he said he saw a lot of bombs going off on U.S. soil. Obviously we hear that as Americans, and we're like, yeah, that would never happen. Because we've always looked at our nation as this big, powerful, strong nation that something like that would get intercepted, it would get stopped. But with so many of insiders out inside the nation, the water system was just attacked in 12 states recently, these past, I think, 2-3 days. 12 states' water system was cyber attacked by Iran. So clearly there's some inside jobs going on. Clearly there's some inside work going on, that you see these Muslims trying to completely take over the nation into the state. Right now in the state of Florida, right now you have, I've been paying a lot of attention to the Republican nominees. I don't pay too much to the Democratic ones in Florida because really is, I don't think Florida's been Democratic in over 20 something years. So I was paying attention to it, and some of these guys that are running for the Republican nomination, right? They have so many Islamic donors, So you start wondering why are these Islamic leaders have their hands so involved? Because clearly there is a game plan. There is a game plan to state by state, city by city, start taking over the United States of America. So I think Christians should start getting in, whether it's through the city, become the mayor, get into the Senate. I honestly, my personal conviction is I think we should skip those smaller roles and get into the Senate and get into Congress. Because if you pay attention to what's going on, a lot of them are going into the Senate and getting into Congress because that's where the, legislation, that's where a lot of these laws are either, being made or stopped through these votes, right? Because if they're going to pass a bill, they need the vote. They need, it goes to the House, goes to the Senate. So even if there's a Christian president, right? It wouldn't matter if there's a Christian president if the Senate and the Congress, right, is Islamic. If our judicial system, which we just saw, Islamic man become a judge in California, and somebody would say, well, why can't they be with their beliefs? It's because their beliefs is not like other beliefs. That judge would be considered a non-Muslim or a fake Muslim or a kuffar is what they would call them if he doesn't judge based off the Quran, right? So if he's throwing somebody in jail, or he ain't gonna throw a Muslim in jail. You're not allowed to turn on another Muslim. So you see how their religion is not going to allow them to betray another Muslim, is not going to allow them to betray a Muslim nation. So how is it that you're in a nation in a political government position that is clearly in support of everything opposite of what America stands for? So it wouldn't really work. So you got somebody that becomes a senator and their hand is in the cookie jar with Iran. They're not here. They're not here to help America. They're not here to make America better. They're not here to make your state, comply with the Constitution and amendments. They want to bring a complete different thing. And even that is a fulfillment of what Daniel said, that this Antichrist is going to come and bring in a foreign god, a god that's not known to their mother, fathers, or their ancestor. Allah is foreign to America and to many parts of the world. So I just figured, let me do a part 2, just kind of talking about, you saw what happened, like I said, in Spain. I mean, they came in and, I mean, how's that not an inside job? How do, what is it, like 40,000 or whatever, just come into their country like nothing. And I believe it was like 40 something deaths recorded since they came in. You see this happening everywhere. And Americans are not waking up. Supposed Christians are getting offended by this type of talk. It's just kind of getting sad. So it's time to get up, time to raise up, time to pray and do something about it. So let's see what happens in the next coming weeks. Let's see what happens in November. Let's be praying that in November that none of these people win. Because if they win and you're watching this, you're a Christian, that's going to be your children, your kids' future, and even your future that is going to be impacted. And your freedom to worship, your freedom of speech, all of those things is going to be impacted. All right, see you guys in the next video.